You're listening to MANX Radio, and I'm Judith Lay, welcoming you to the podcast of the MANX Sky at Night with Howard Parkin.
The nation station, MANX Radio.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Well, the clocks have gone back. There's more hours of darkness, and so we should be welcoming a very happy Howard Parkin for this month's edition of the MANX Sky at Night. Faster, my Howard.
It's great to be back with you again, and there's so much to talk about this month. It's just been unbelievable. People sometimes think that astronomy can be a boring or a subject that nothing changes much. But wow, what's been going on this last month has been absolutely unbelievable. It's been incredible. What with the Aurora, with comets, with SpaceX, with missions being launched to Jupiter and beyond. It's just crazy. So we'll go through it in order.
Right. So what's going to be happening in our MANX skies in the coming weeks then?
Well, in the night sky at the moment, Judith, we're transiting from that period from the autumn sky through to the winter sky. And if you go outside on a clear night, which hopefully we'll get over the next few days, we've not been that lucky recently, but we do get the occasional good night, and we're looking forward to some cold, frosty nights as we head through the winter. But at the moment, we've got the planet Venus dominating the evening sky. If you're heading towards Peel or you're anywhere near the western horizon, just look up after sunset, about half an hour after sunset. Even in a light sky, you're going to see the brilliant planet Venus. Very, very bright, very, very easy to spot. And it really is great to see. And what is happening with Venus is it's getting further and further away from the sun. It's what we call elongating away from the sun. It will actually be at its maximum distance away from the sun in January, February time. But that means that it's going to get rising into a darker sky all the time, which means it's going to dominate our skies over the Christmas period. And everyone will be asking me what it is. Is it in relation to possibly the Star of Bethlehem? And what I thought we would do, we'd probably talk about that at the end of November when we do our next night sky, which will take us through the Christmas period. So that's the planet Venus. If you then look about 90 degrees, if you're looking in the west towards Peel and Venus, turn around and look to the south now, look towards Port Erin and Castletown, that sort of area, you'll see above you, if you know the stars at all, you'll see a wonderful shape in the sky called the Square of Pegasus. Quite unmistakable. It's almost overhead at the moment. And if you follow the right-hand side of the Square of Pegasus down, you'll come to a bright star. That bright star is the star Fomalhaut. And that bright star is one of the first stars known to have planets going around it. And we discovered that way back in the 80s, and now we believe there's many, many stars have got planetary systems. But if you follow that same line down, you come to a patch of the sky where there's not much at all, other than that bright star I've just told you about, Fomalhaut. But in the middle, or towards the horizon, halfway down between Fomalhaut and the horizon, you're going to have a star which is quite bright, but not as bright as Fomalhaut. That's the planet Saturn. And Saturn is, of course, always of great interest to people because Saturn is the object with the beautiful ring system around it. Unfortunately, you won't see the rings very well at the moment, even with small pair binoculars or even a small telescope, because the rings are more or less edge on to us now. We have this, what we call the ring plane crossing every few years, and we're having that at the moment. But don't worry about it. In about 18 months' time or so, the rings will start to open out again, and we'll get the magnificent view of them, even in a small telescope. But now if you turn around and look towards the eastern horizon, you'll see a very bright star sitting on the eastern horizon. This is, of course, the bright planet Jupiter. Quite unmistakable, very, very bright, very, very easy to see. Not far away from a fainter star upper right of it, which is the principal star Aldebaran in the eye of Taurus the Bull. But Jupiter needs no description at all, really. It really is very bright, very easy to spot. And rising a little bit after it, about an hour or so after you first see Jupiter on the eastern horizon, you're going to see another brightish star. We've got all the winter stars in this area of the sky anyway, but a red-coloured star in the constellation of Gemini at the moment is, of course, the planet Mars. So there you have it. Just at the moment, Not content with all the other activities going on with astronomy, we've got a whole host of different planets. We've got Venus, Saturn, Jupiter and Mars, all visible in our night skies from the Isle of Man just at the moment.
Now, what about that comet? The one you mentioned last month, the one I'm not even attempting to say its name.
Well, comets come round very, very occasionally. The last sort of decent one we saw was in comet Neowise in 2020, in the middle of COVID. But this comet, it's gone now, unfortunately. Comet Shushin-Shorn. Comet Shushin-Shorn was quite spectacular. Seen all over the island. Lots of people sent me pictures of it. I got some pictures myself. And this comet went round the sun and then reappeared in our skies on about the 18th of October and was visible for about a week, 10 days, quite clearly with the naked eye. I remember vividly on the 18th of October, it was a horrible cloudy night, as was the 19th, but I did manage to catch it on the Wednesday. So it was quite spectacular. And comets, of course, come from the outer solar system and they go around the sun and then they melt and their tails point away from the sun. And this had a lovely tail, this comet in particular. But, you know, don't worry if you didn't see it because it will come round again in about 80,000 years. But comets, of course, sometimes, not very often, but they're like buses. They come round in twos. And what's happened now is Shushin-Shorn has gone effectively, but there's another comet going round the sun. It's closest to the sun on the 27th, which is, of course, only yesterday. And on the 27th, it went round the sun. And because it's what we call a sun-grazing comet, we are seriously concerned that it might get destroyed by the gravitational forces of the sun. This is not uncommon for sun grazers. However, if it survives its trip round the sun, it will re-emerge into our skies and be seen brilliantly in the morning sky before sunrise. And this comet is called S1 Atlas. The word Atlas is from a NASA. It's an acronym for a satellite or an observational system they're using, unlike Shushin-Shorn, which was spotted by some Chinese astronomers and given the name Shushin-Shorn Atlas. This second one has just been called S1 Atlas. And if it should survive its trip round the outside of the sun, it will be quite spectacular because being nearer to the sun, more material will melt, there'll be a bigger tail, and we're quite excited about the prospects for this one. Don't be too surprised, however, if it doesn't happen, because, as I say, being close to the sun, it might well just disintegrate, as happened to Comet Ison in the year 2013. But the big story for looking at the sky for this month has got to be the aurora. We had on the 10th of October one of the best displays of aurora I've ever seen, and that includes going up to Norway to see the aurora as well. The aurora was really spectacular, seen all over the island, seen as far down as Florida, seen as far down as Spain. And what got me was you could see the colours quite clearly with the naked eye. It really was spectacular. Lots of beautiful photographs. Incidentally, the post office have just issued a set of stamps for these now, which I hope people will be interested in. It really was spectacular. The aurora is classified in what we call the KP level. There's a whole host of different means by which we record aurora, but the KP level is the most common. And normally the aurora sits at level KP 1 or 2, maybe a 3 or 4. And if we're very lucky, we get a 5 or a 6 or even a 7. Well, the scale goes from 0 to 9. On October the 10th, it was a KP9. It really was spectacular. Best display, I understand, that aurora has been seen in the Isle of Man for over 70 years. And the best part of it is, it's probably not the last display we're going to get in this particular period of auroral spotting. As the sun goes through its maximum period of activity, the estimated peak is now estimated between November this year and March of next year. So there's a very real chance we'll get some further outbursts of activity on the sun, which will cause us some great more auroras. So keep your eyes and ears peeled, and I look forward to hopefully seeing lots of pictures from people as they take pictures of the aurora in the skies over the Isle of Man. And that leads me nicely to my song, which I thought Northern Lights would be a great song to use.
Destination outward bound, I turn to see the northern lights behind the wheel.
Horizons seem to beckon me. Learned how to cry too young, so now I live to see. The northern lights are in my mind. They guide me back to you. Horizons seem to beckon me. Learned how to cry too young, so now I live to see. Though it's hard away from you, traveling roads and passing through, it's not for money and it's not for fame. I just can't explain. Sometimes it's lonely, marking the space between the days. Early hours pass away. I sing to you of northern lights. I sing for you of northern nights. Past or future, here or there, shelter comes in words from you, so talk to me. I hear your voice, it comforts me. In morning dreams I take your hand, you walk with me. The northern lights are in my mind. They guide me back to you. Peace enfolds the still night air. Home again I look for you and find you there. Destination homeward now. Take the easy way, bring me down. Making the hard way now I see. Hard to be really free. I'm missing you near me. Marking the space between the days. Early hours pass away. I sing to you of northern lights. I sing for you of northern nights. The northern lights are in my mind. They guide me back to you. The northern lights are in my eyes. They guide me back to you. The northern lights are in my mind. They guide me back to you. The northern lights are in my eyes. They guide me back to you. The northern lights are in my mind. They guide me back to you. The northern lights are in my eyes. They guide me back to you. The northern lights are in my mind. They guide me back to you. The northern lights are in my eyes. They guide me back to you. The northern lights are in my eyes. They guide me back to you.
Welcome back to part 2 of this month's edition of the MANX Sky at Night with Howard Parkin. Howard, your music choice was very appropriately Northern Lights, but I thought we'd have something a little different, the version by Judith Durham.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that song, which is entirely appropriate when you consider the majesty of the Northern Lights. But on to our space activity, and wow, this has just been incredible. And I've got to say at the outset, that landing a few weeks ago now that SpaceX did when they launched their Starship rocket on its 5th test flight, and they managed to bring the rocket back, not just brought it back to land it, but actually caught it with the the giant chopsticks, they call it. It was just mind-blowingly spectacular. To me, that was one of the most spectacular events that's taken place in space activity for many years. And it really is the opening of a new era and a new saga in the history of space exploration. To have done it so successfully on only the first attempt was unbelievable. And you mark my words, this is going to bring about all sorts of changes in the space industry. I suspect you're going to see NASA and others are going to start thinking seriously about the possibility of reusing rockets. You just think about it for one moment. You build a massive, huge rocket to get people into space or payloads into space. You've got these fantastic engines. You've got all this fuel. You've got all this plumbing, all this piping and everything else. And basically, the rocket just gets thrown away. It gets literally, when it gets to a certain point where it falls off, the first stage falls off and lands in the ocean and is destroyed. Well, now SpaceX have proved you don't have to do that. They'd already proved this with their other vehicles, the Falcon 9 and the Falcon Heavy. But now to have done it with this new, huge, massive booster, they had to catch it, incidentally, because they weren't confident they could put legs on it that would be too heavy and that would be able to sustain the impact of the landing. So they decided to catch it. And you all saw the results. It really was incredible. I been on a ship recently and I showed the video of that, and in the middle of my lecture everyone burst into applause. It was just so amazing, and I can't stress enough how spectacular that was and the implications it's got for the future of space exploration. In the meantime, back to more mundane matters. It sounds mundane, but it's not really. The crew of SpaceX Dragon, the crew returned back to the Earth on the 24th of October. And this is the crew that included Mike Barratt. And Mike Barratt was one of the astronauts that came to the island back in 2012, when he was one of the crew of Nicole Stott's crew of the last flight of the Space Shuttle Discovery. And Mike Barratt has been up there for 6 months, and amazing bloke. He's the guy who gave the wonderful story about the Laxey wheel, Nia Ramsey. That was the only thing wrong with it. But Mike did a great story about that, and they were fascinated with the engineering involved in Laxey wheel, which, when you consider it, the Laxey wheel engineering is the equivalent of the space age industry and engineering we've got today. So that was the story from SpaceX, and we look now with great anticipation to the sixth launch of Starship, when I understand they're going to try and bring back the first half of the rocket. This is the bit which will have the crew on board, and this Starship is actually being built and designed now to take astronauts down to the surface of the moon, probably as early as 2026, probably 2027. And that's why it was so important that SpaceX get this development, they get this ability to test these things and bring them back successfully, because that means they can now proceed with the next step, which is, of course, designing the lander to take them to the moon, because that is critical to going to the moon. Until the Starship lander, the HLS, the Human Landing System, is ready, they won't be able to land that on the moon because they're not ready, of course. So that has delayed the original date of going back to the moon, which originally was 2024, to 2026 officially. The official line from NASA is no earlier than September 2026. But I suspect it's going to push back to 27 or even 28. But I reckon they'll get men and women on the moon, I would say certainly by 2030. There's a prediction for you, which we can talk about hopefully in a few years' time. The other thing that's been going on in space, of course, there's been two fantastic launches recently. Both didn't get a lot of publicity because of all the stuff about SpaceX, but the launch of the Hera spacecraft, the European Space Agency spacecraft Hera, a few weeks ago. This is a spacecraft the Europeans launched to follow up on the American mission to the DART mission, the Dual Asteroid Rendezvous Test, where they were basically trying to see if they could smash into a small moonlet going around a small asteroid and alter its orbit. They did alter it. The goal was to alter it by about 20-odd seconds. They actually altered it by 7 minutes. So it proved the technology is there, and we can do that, hopefully to deflect an incoming asteroid that may be going to impact on the Earth and cause damage. What the Hera mission is doing, the Hera mission is now going out to map this satellite, this moonlet, very, very precisely, and see exactly what the mass was, what the size was, what the implications were. I mean, if you think about the logic of it, you smash into a small object and destroy it. All you're going to do is make it in from one big piece into lots of little pieces. So you need to make sure you're deflecting it the right way and all the rest. So very exciting, and always something that we're looking out for. And that will happen in about 12 months' time when this spacecraft reaches Didymos, is the system it's gone to. And the final story I want to mention, of course, is the launch to the planet Jupiter, the Europa Clipper launch, which launched the day after the SpaceX catch, incidentally, so it didn't get much publicity as much as it should have done. But this Europa Clipper launch is a spacecraft that's going to get to Jupiter in 2030, and when it gets into orbit around Jupiter, it's then going to explore in detail the moon Europa, because the moon Europa is thought to have a frozen, icy surface, but underneath there's liquid water. And where there's water, where water can exist as a liquid throughout the period of the object's orbit around Jupiter or the sun or wherever, where water can exist as a liquid, there's the potential for life to evolve. And that's what we're looking for. And incidentally, there's a lovely Manx connection to Europa, because one of the craters on Europa is called Manannan. And at one stage, they were going to land on Europa, or in the crater Europa, and penetrate the ice with a small submersible and explore the water underneath. That got shelved. I think it got shelved rather than cancelled. I think that's maybe something for the future. But as with everything, all these things cost a lot of money. And of course, we have to be careful what we spend our money on. And these days, that is the biggest factor that restricts our ability to explore space. It's the budgetary constraints, not the engineering constraints. So that's it. It's been a very exciting time just recently. As I say, I've struggled in my night school classes. Every week I've had to make sure the news is up to date, and I just can't keep pace with everything that's going on. Lots of other stories we could talk about, but I'm afraid I think we've run out of time. So maybe in December things may be a little quieter, although I doubt it.
Do you realise, Howard, you'd got so much to tell us there that you hardly stopped to take a breath?
There's just so much going on in space at the moment. It's been incredible. And we look forward to future developments as well, not just in space, but also what we can see in the sky. We have got a great meteor shower to look forward to in December, the Geminid meteor shower. Lots of planetary activity with Mars coming close to us in January. So we'll speak about that next month. In the meantime, it's been great talking to you again, Judith. Have a good evening, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Howard, and we look forward to welcoming you back for the next edition of the MANX Sky at Night on the last Sunday in November.
Bye-bye for now.
The nation